short prayer book.
La 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 Shabbat Shalom Shabbat Shalom Shabbat Shalom Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's wonderful to have Cheryl back to help lead us in our prayers while Kathy's on vacation. We want to start by honoring birthdays and anniversaries that are during this month, which is, believe it or not, the month of September. So if you were people born in September, we know are wiser and more attractive than others. And so please join me in sharing the fact, those of you born in the month that I'm born in, if you'll, oh, see? Look at all of these people whose parents love New Year's. This is, so if you'll stand, we'll join in Shakyanu. If you have a birthday or anniversary, let's all celebrate those moments where we celebrate each other. We'll share in the words of Shakyanu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Amen.
We get to enjoy many, many more together. We'll turn now as we light our Shabbat candles, as we invite Audrey Baker to lead us in our candle blessings. They're found on page 2 in our prayer books.
Thank you. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen.
Take a moment to walk back through our week, especially at this time of year as we're now in the month of Elul, the month that leads us up to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We've started to mentally and spiritually prepare for our High Holy Days, a time where we will, perhaps this year, we won't count our blessings until they occur. We'll come together in the most typical way we have in years, to truly we look at these holidays for the first time in 3 years, and we're not planning them to be drastically different than how they've been done for years before for the first time since the pandemic. And hopefully that means that we'll get to feel that power of being together, of looking back over this year, and not only thinking about the pandemic, but also thinking about the wonderful things that happened, the moments that were challenging, the people that we've lost, as we would in any other year. We'll perhaps not take that normalcy for granted. And so we do that every week. We take this time to look back through our week, to count the days, recognize the ups and the downs, and to make this a moment of blessing. As we turn to page 20, we share the words of L'Chadodi to welcome in Shabbat, to make sure that this day is a day worthy of celebration. Join with us, page 20.
לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. 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 שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ותפארת להילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, 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 שיר דברי. כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בלה, גם בשמחה וצוחלה, תוך אמוני ים סגולה.
בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Page 26, Hatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ויאמר דברי חירותי, וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה, בעגלה, ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם עולמי עולמיה, יתברך. יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה, שמי הקודש הבריחו לעילה. מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמה, ואמרו אמן.
We remind ourselves that entrances to holiness are everywhere, that there is no place on this planet without the presence of God, without the opportunity for us to be in awe of what happens right before us. As we call ourselves to pray, page 28, the words of Baruch Hu, we begin our formal prayers.
Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Baruchu et Adonai Hamivorach Baruch Adonai Hamivorach Hamivorach Leolam Vaed Hamivorach Hamivorach Leolam Vaed.
Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Baruch atah Adonai Hama'ariv Aravim. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom this evening flows. Please join with me as we share together the words at the top of page 33. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
Please be seated. Page 36. We share together V'ahavta.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohechem Emet. In our family, we're in the fall sports now. My daughter is playing softball, which she enjoys. She's playing up on a team, meaning she's playing with older kids. So as one might very well guess, our kids don't tend to look older than they are. They're not taller than they should be. And so when our kids play up a league with high schoolers, they really look like they shouldn't be there. But nonetheless, she's playing hard, and I was able to go to her game last night. And she was very proud of herself. She got a new coach, and she slid into first base, which she didn't need to do. But then for those who know the game, but then she slid into third base and was called safe. And I said to her, she was very proud of herself, because sliding is a scary thing for those who played baseball or softball. I said to her afterwards, I said, I really like this coach. He seems calm and like he's really teaching you all stuff, and you're playing. The team clearly played with some strategy. They bunted and they stole, and there was real ball happening. I said, you know, and he doesn't yell at anybody. He just seems real polite. She said, no, he yelled at me. He said, when I slid into third, he yelled at me. He said, Hannah, you have to smile more. I said, I like him even more. This is not a small thing. That we get out into the world and we worry about sliding if you're a 12-year-old and doing it correctly and not skinning the whole side of your leg, or we worry about work, or we worry about all the things we have going on. And the truth is, we don't yell at each other enough about just finding the joy in the moment. Living life, as I've been doing some reading for the High Holy Days, as somebody jokingly said, they put in text messages these days, IRL means in real life. Really living life in real, to enjoy the moment that you're in. And I think that part of our prayer service, we end the Via Hafta by talking about how we should teach our children and how much love we should have for God and our people. And then we always sort of sneak in that word emet, because you're supposed to connect Via Hafta to Micha Mocha. Micha Mocha is the moment in which we shout it out in joy. And emet is the word in between, truth. Somewhere between all the things that we have to do to teach our children, to love our families, to be a part of a people, all the stress we put on us. Between that and shouting out for joy, we should embrace the idea of what's really true in our world and in our lives and what's important. So we do that, we should smile more and perhaps worry less. Page 40, we shout out what the words that the Israelites sang from their core soul as they became free, crossing the sea. Page 40, Micha Mocha.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע הים לפני משה, זה עלינו ויאמרו, אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך, לעולם ועד.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. God, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Vishamru, page 44.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם.
Pray as if everything depends upon God, but we ask each other to act as if everything depends upon us. Page 46, we rise for our Amidah.
Adonai, sifatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומשיח ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם וזרוע שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה, רב להושיח, מוריד הטל. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל.
אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך הסלע. Baruch אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. Please be seated. We join together, top of page 55. Please say with me. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-Shabbat. On page, before we share the words of Shalom Rav on page 60, a few intersecting stories from this week are, one is that we're planning once again on the theme of getting back to normal, taking our teens to New York. And so I was looking at the museums that we would go to in the fall when we take them in November. One of them is the 9/11 Memorial Museum, which, for I think I can safely say all of us here, is a museum that we remember when it was built. But when we take the teenagers, it's a museum that they have only known as something that was already created and already happened once they were born. My son middle son Noah came home, and he was all excited because, appropriately excited, that he had learned this amazing story of somebody who survived this terrible thing, because they were talking about survivors in school. He said, "Dad, did you know that there was a day where these 3 planes went into these, they crashed on purpose, and there was this guy, a firefighter, who went up to try and save people, and he survived? Did you know there was a day where 3 planes did that?" He had no idea. So then Hannah says, "Yeah, it's Dad's birthday. You have to remember that. Have you heard of it? Because I was born on September 11th. So then I speak with somebody who was born in the 1930s, who has memory of how many ups and downs, world wars, mass genocide of our own people, wonderful times, tragic times. And you think about the short memory of our kids today and how much angst they've seen in their short life. And then we turn, at least for me, one response is when you turn to the words of Shalom Rav, and I know we introduce it similarly every week, it's a prayer written before all of these things, which is to say, there have always been times that have been terribly tragic where what we've asked of God is to grant an overwhelming sense of peace to a world that seems so troubled. And so we share these words. Sometimes during good times, we perhaps take them for granted, and then sometimes in the challenging times, we say, no, these are words that we need to keep in our prayer book because they have not been fulfilled yet. And so we share them in whatever way we see them in our own lives today, but certainly in the context of our world, page 60, the words of Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. V'tov b'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam.
We take a moment for our own personal prayers.
Usi shalom bimromav, hu yasi shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Yasi shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'al 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 kol Yisrael.
Shabbat Shalom. So I've mentioned a few books. Well, I've mentioned one book. I'm going to send out an email next week. By saying it out loud, that means it'll definitely happen. That I'll send out an email next week with some of the books that I hope people would consider reading in the days leading up to the holidays or perhaps during the holidays. But one that I'm looking at again this year that I know many of you have looked at before is by Rabbi Alan Liu. This is Real and You're Totally Unprepared. I think is that the title, Susan? Completely Unprepared. Completely Unprepared. And it's a deep dive into the theology and the structure of the High Holy Days and how we should approach them. So I would tell you, it's like going to therapy and preparing for even more therapy in the High Holy Days. If that's what you want from the holidays this year, then read this book. And in the section I was reading this week, he tells a story of being outside with his son, who I sensed was older, a grown son at the time, and it started to rain, and so they ducked into their little garden house because it was pouring in their backyard. And he's looking out the window, and his son says, "Isn't it beautiful?" And Rabbi Liu is looking out, and he's like, he can't see anything beautiful. And his son says, "No, look at the window itself. Don't look through the window to the world. The world is ugly right now. It's pouring down rain. But look inside the window panes, and you can see there's this whole little world happening inside the window. There's bugs in there, and they're like spider webs, and it's all these colors, and they were stuck inside this little shed." And he looked at it closely, and he was in awe, as his son was, at what was happening in this window that every other time he would simply just look through. And he uses that story as his example of what we should be doing in preparation for the High Holy Days. And what he means by that is, he writes in the chapter, he says, we have to shift our gaze from the world itself, the world out there, to the window through which we see it. Because that window is not just blank and transparent. The window is a world unto itself. He says it's a world teeming with life, and that life affects what we see. So I think the question that he poses on us, he wrote this book many years ago, but especially in today's world, would be, so what window do we normally look out and see the world through? It's not normally the garden window. Is it CNN? Is it Fox News? Is it the morning paper? Is it the emails that we get? Is it what pops up on Facebook? What is the lens through which we're seeing the world 363 days a year? And then how can we, on the days when we're in our sanctuary at our holiest days of the year, how can we be sure that we can see the world differently on those days? Because the goal is that after the holidays, you'll know you've done the holidays well if you see the world differently after the holidays than you saw the world before. So I would almost say it's become a tradition that sometime around this time of year, I like to give a plug for Yom Kippur, which is counterintuitive because if there's a holiday that people show up to the synagogue for, it's Yom Kippur. However, I often feel, as I look out at the sanctuary and see everybody show up, mostly for the 10:30 service, and then see most people depart after the 10:30 service, that you're coming for just a slice of what Yom Kippur should feel like, and those who stay all day get what I feel for myself, and I hope for others, is the full sense of Yom Kippur. So here's my yearly plug, and then I want to share one little tidbit from my teacher that I think has to do with how this lens can look differently if we prepare. So Yom Kippur officially begins with Kol Nidre, and the sound that we often close our eyes for and hear the cello and the cantor chant Kol Nidre, and the somber and serious nature of that evening in which we wear a tallis at night, one of the only times we wear a tallis at night formally. The morning begins with the morning service, not so drastically different. A serious morning to do our inner reflection and to read some of the most challenging prayers that we have, to reflect on life and death and the opening of a book and the closing of a book, and to ask ourselves those heavy questions that we're taught from the youngest age. Just today, I solidified, or was grateful for, our Yom Kippur Social Justice panel, which is, again, under the theme of going back to normal. Coming back, we will have a panel on Yom Kippur afternoon. We're focusing on the role of religion in civic society. We have 3 guests. One is a emeritus law professor from Case Western who once clerked for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. One is a OBGYN who for the last 20 years has been doing abortion work. And one is Reverend Nanette Pitt from the First Congregational UCC Church in downtown Akron. And they're going to share with us how religion has impacted our civic life and perhaps how religion can impact our civic life going forward. So we move from this serious service in the morning into our serious issues. This year we'll then go out into this space, which is something new, for our family service at 3 o'clock, the afternoon service where we hear the story of Jonah, and our youth are going to participate, and we're going to utilize this space. And we go back inside for the Avodah service, which some of you may remember in the last few years prior to the pandemic was a musical service, a meditative musical service we called it, I believe. We have beautiful music where it's really less about words and more about listening. Then we have Yizkor to remember all of those that we've lost, especially recently. And then we conclude my favorite service of Yom Kippur in the Elah, where it's a brief service. We share Havdalah, and we look back on the 24 hours as if it's been a week, that we've gone through this together, and that we get to start fresh. That's the part I think I really bugs me that people miss. They miss the finish line. It's like they run the hardest part of the race, and then they cut out before the good part. And so that's the trajectory. That's what this lens of Yom Kippur looks like. Now, if you were paying attention, right in that little part, there was a part where I said there's an Avodah service. The Avodah service used to be it. That was where the high priest in the temple would take the goat, and they would do the scapegoat ceremony, and they would let this goat go free, and they would sacrifice the other goat. This was the big moment on Yom Kippur. That became, after thousands of years, our meditative musical service. Quite different. Different imagery, different sounds. But it was rethought. Of course, it was rethought after we no longer made sacrifices. It was rethought after the destruction of the temple. And it was rethought when our new prayer book was created. And in that rethinking as to what this service should be on the afternoon of Yom Kippur, when perhaps we have not so many people in our sanctuaries, but this used to be the core of the service, of what we would do on Yom Kippur. How do we make this feel special? Rabbi Richard Levy of blessed memory, who was one of my professors, and I've spoken of many times, and who, as Rabbi Horowitz would say, was infused with God in the way classical reform was, but he had a different theology than classical reform, but he talked about God all the time. Here's what he said the questions should be when you think about the Avodah service in the middle of Yom Kippur afternoon. Used to be the service where the high priest would make the biggest sacrifice. He says, here are 4 questions to ask yourself. If you were the high priest, who would you want to bring close to God this year? And how? And how would you do it through the life you live now? That's question 1. Question 2. If you were entrusted with the knowledge of words as powerful as the name of God, what other words would you like to know? And how might you use the power of those words to bring good things to the world? In other words, what are the things you would say this year that would make the world better? Number 3, if you were the high priest and you were prostrating yourself in submission to the most powerful being imaginable, what would you pray for this year? What is the most important prayer for you right now if you were laying down, prostrating yourself before God? And 4, when the Israelites were on the way to the promised land, they built a prototype of the temple called a mishkan, a structure that helped them experience God in their midst. And the process of building that structure was called melacha, work. The same word that describes the work that we do every day. So question 4 is, what is holy about the work you do every day? What can you identify about your work that contributes to the building of a center for holiness? In what ways do you, or might you, act as a priest in a holy space this year? Asked on any other day of the year, perhaps these questions seem absurd. But on Yom Kippur, we speak that way. The question that Rabbi Alan Liu asks us is, are we ready to see the world that way? Are we ready to look through, ask ourselves those questions, and be ready to come out of Yom Kippur looking at the world differently? And so now is the time to get ready, to ask ourselves how we see the world now. What news are we listening to? What news should we turn off? What are the books we want to pick up? What are the questions? Perhaps Rabbi Levy's questions are not the right questions for you. But what would be the sacred, important, holy questions that you need to ask yourself on Yom Kippur so that we can leave Yom Kippur and look out at the world in a different way? It is that time of year where we ask ourselves to start thinking this way, to remembering the faces that we miss, to honoring the people who are in our lives, to being together as a community, to making these days holy so that they fit the description we give them. I look forward to having these days with you. I know everybody who's here tonight will stay the whole day of Yom Kippur now. I do hope that however you spend Yom Kippur and however you spend the holidays, that you find it meaningful, that you find it to be filled with community, and that you find it to lead you toward that new vision for 5783. Amen. We'll turn now to the words of Misha Berach. Words not for only the months and years ahead, but words for the right now, for the present, for those who are suffering and in need of healing in this moment. Page 253. We share the words of our prayer for healing.
Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
The names you'd like to share, please share them as I look around the room.
Sally Baden, Joe Baden, and Monica Rod. Sandy Moses, Al Moses, Bert Margolis. David Rosenfeld.
Bruce Silver and Elisa Galinsky.
Sissy Hoffman.
Misha Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Page 282, please rise for Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל עמונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
reading on page 290. Why should I wish to see God better than this day? I see something of God in each hour of the 24 and each moment then. In the faces of men and women I see God, and in my own face in the glass. I find letters from God dropped in the street, and every one is signed by God's name. And I leave them where they are, for I know that wheresoever I go, others will punctually come forever and ever. We remember those whom we've lost in our community, beginning with those that we've lost in these recent weeks. Rhoda Migdal, Ruth Rubenstein, Kathy Habel, Sylvia Lewis, Tal Fishman, Adrian Berkowitz, and Joan Nelson. We add to their names those that we lost at this time in years past: Joseph Brill, Sally Roth Cohen, Helen Ellison, Molly First, Joseph Guerin, Herman Goldman, Ann Goldsmith, Celia Gordon, Eva Gross, Eve Henkin, Joseph Hollander, Manuel Kaufman, David Kay, Henry Krakauer, Archie May, Helen Meltzer, Catherine Noble, Nina Poulis, Helen Richmond, Alvin Roller, Bob Rosenthal, Joseph Shear, Charles Sheridan, David Siff, Bert Marks Sr., Louis Topper, Doris Dode Weil, Ronald Weiner, Sarah Whitelaw, Louis Woods, and Seymour Zipper. If there are names I mispronounced or names you'd like to share, please share them. We rise as we share the words of Mourner's Kaddish, page 294. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, b'agala uvizman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam almei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudesha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, l'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, huya asei shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to all as we say, amen. We bless each other now with the words of the priests.
Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
May God bless you and keep you.
Yair Adonai panav elecha v'choneka.
May God's light shine upon you and be gracious unto you.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
May you feel God's presence within you always, and may you find peace.
Amen.
Please remain standing as we invite Audrey forward once again to raise our Kiddush cup and lead us in Motzi.
The heaven and the earth were finished, and all their array. On the seventh day, God finished the work that God had been doing, and God ceased on the seventh day from all work that God had done. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because on it God ceased from all work of creation that God had done. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'yahava uvratzon ichilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדיש השבת. Amen.
If you'll raise the challah, let's join together in Motzi.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המוציא לחם מן הארץ. Amen.
It's a tradition during the month of Elul that you hear the shofar throughout the month, and so we'll share a few sounds of the shofar, and then we'll have announcements and close our service. Be seated as we'll share a couple quick announcements. First, thank you to Cheryl for joining us tonight and adding her beautiful voice once again to our service. It's wonderful to have you back and for you not to be a newbie to us anymore, so it's great to have you here. There is no Torah study tomorrow morning. We will be back in person next week. And so please, for those who join us for Torah study, please pay attention because with the schedules of the holidays, and a number of other factors, we're not meeting in person every week. Tomorrow morning, there's no Torah study at all. Most mornings, it will be at least online, and we're trying to have a larger Torah study in person with extra food, which is the real draw, we know. So extra food once a month on Torah study morning to bring people back in joy to Torah study. And the most important thing to do is register for the High Holy Days. So register, please, for everything. The website is open. I believe it opened, last Wednesday? People have been registering. Yes, yeah. So good job to those who already registered. Please make sure that you register for all of the events that require it, which you'll see online. You should have gotten an email today from Social Action to please sign up to participate in getting out the vote. We know that there are lots of people out there who are not registered or who don't realize what they need to do. But first, there are lots of people in here, in our congregation, who may not know that they're not registered or may not realize that they could absentee vote. And therefore, for many of them who might be at home for health reasons or other reasons, they might not get to vote. But we have people who are very motivated and willing to help people figure out that process. So please sign up if you want to help. Look at the email from earlier today and sign up to help get out the vote this year. We will close with the words of Adon Olam, which Cheryl's going to teach us a little bit of a new tune, so pay attention.
So this melody was written by Jay Singer, who's a member of the Temple Tifereth Israel. I'm just going to play a little blip of the introduction just so you can hear how joyful it is. And then I'll turn that off and we'll sing a cappella, and I hope you'll join me. And in between the verses, we'll sing Lie, Lie, Lie. So no excuse for not knowing the words. It's working. אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נשא וחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא לי 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 La 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 ואחרי ככלות הכל, לבדו ימלוך נורא, והוא היה והוא הווה, והוא יהיה בתפארה. לי 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 La 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 היי והוא אחד ואין שני להמשילו להכבירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית המזרע לי 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 La 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 בידו אפקיר רוחי בעת תשען ויעירה ואם רוחי גווייתי אדוני לי ולא יירא. Shabbat Shalom.
And the to-go neg is right inside the front doors, so don't forget your treat. You can't come to you can't come to services and not go home without a treat. So please get a treat. Kim made a special trip to pick up our to-go neg today, so please grab something to go. Have a wonderful Labor Day weekend and a wonderful Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.